What if the next global war isn't fought with tanks, missiles, or soldiers, but with tariffs, sanctions, and trade bans? What if the battlefield isn't Ukraine, Taiwan, or the Middle East, but your wallet? Because in recent weeks, Donald Trump has proposed something that could fundamentally reshape the global economy: massive tariffs, sweeping trade restrictions, and a strategy that some analysts are already calling an economic war, not against one country, but against the entire global trading system. If implemented, this could trigger retaliation from China, strain alliances with Europe, disrupt supply chains, and increase prices for millions of people worldwide. But here's the real question. Is this reckless economic aggression or a calculated strategy to restore American power? And more importantly, who actually wins and who loses if this economic war becomes reality? Today, on the GeoPulse, we break down exactly what Trump is proposing, why it matters, and how it could reshape the future of global power. Part 1. Understanding the weapon. Economic war. When most people hear the word war, they think of bombs and bullets. But in the 21st century, one of the most powerful weapons isn't military, it's economic. Economic war means using tools like tariffs, sanctions trade, bans, currency manipulation, investment restrictions. These tools don't destroy cities. They destroy economies. They slow growth, raise unemployment, increase inflation, and weaken rival nations without firing a single shot. And Donald Trump has made it clear. He believes America has been losing this economic war for decades. In his view, countries like China have taken advantage of the United States through unfair trade, cheap labor, and aggressive industrial policies. Trump's solution? Hit back. Hard. Part 2. The history, Trump's trade. War with China. This isn't new. We've seen this before. Back in 2018, during his first presidency, Trump launched one of the biggest trade wars in modern history. He imposed tariffs on over $360 billion worth of Chinese goods. China responded immediately. They imposed tariffs on American products like soybeans, cars, aircraft parts. Farmers in the United States suffered massive losses. Global markets became volatile. Supply chains were disrupted. But Trump didn't back down. His argument was simple: short-term pain for long-term gain. He believed America needed to break its dependence on China, and in many ways, he changed global trade permanently. Even the Biden administration kept many of Trump's tariffs in place. That tells you something important. This isn't just Trump's view anymore. This is becoming America's strategy. Part 3. Trump's new proposal: a universal tariff. Now, Trump is proposing something even bigger: a universal tariff of up to 10% on all imports, and tariffs of up to 60% on Chinese goods. Let's pause and understand how massive this is. This wouldn't just target China. This would target Europe, Japan, South Korea, Mexico, Canada, and virtually every country exporting to the United States. It's essentially a declaration that America will prioritize domestic production over global trade. This is economic nationalism on a scale we haven't seen in nearly a century. But why? Trump and his supporters argue that America has lost millions of manufacturing jobs because companies moved production overseas. Cheaper labor, lower regulations, higher profits. But lower costs came with a hidden price. America became dependent. Dependent on China for electronics. Dependent on Asia for semiconductors. Dependent on global supply chains for critical industries. And COVID exposed how fragile that system really was. Factories shut down. Supply chains collapsed. And suddenly, the world realized how vulnerable it had become. So Trump's argument resonates with many voters. Bring production back home, even if it means economic confrontation. Let me ask you something. Do you think protecting domestic industries is worth higher prices for consumers? Or should global free trade remain the priority? Comment below. I want to hear your perspective. Part 4. The strategic motive. It's about power, not just trade. This isn't just about economics. It's about global power. For decades, the United States dominated the global economy. It controlled financial systems. It controlled technology. It controlled trade routes. But now, China is rising. China is the world's largest manufacturing powerhouse. It produces more steel, electronics, and industrial goods than any other country. It's building infrastructure across Asia, Africa, and Latin America. And it's challenging American dominance. Trump sees this as a direct threat. His strategy is simple: slow China's rise, protect American industry, and force companies to return production to the United States. This is economic containment, very similar to how the US contained the Soviet Union during the Cold War. But here's the difference. China is deeply integrated into the global economy. You can't isolate China without disrupting the entire world, and that creates serious risks. Part 5. The global reaction. Allies and rivals respond. If Trump implements universal tariffs, the rest of the world won't just accept it. They will respond. China will almost certainly retaliate with its own tariffs. Europe could impose countermeasures. Even close allies like Japan and Canada could push back. This could trigger a chain reaction, a global trade war. Countries may begin forming competing economic blocs. Instead of one global economy, you could see multiple economic alliances, one led by the United States, another led by China. This fragmentation would change everything: prices, supply chains, investments, jobs, and economic growth worldwide. Here's something important to consider. Global trade has been one of the biggest drivers of economic growth over the past 50 years. If that system fractures, the consequences could last decades. Let me ask you, do you think the world is heading toward economic cooperation or economic division? Part 6. The hidden impact. Supply chains and your daily life. This isn't abstract. This affects everyday life. Think about your smartphone. Its components likely come from China, Taiwan, South Korea, Japan, Germany. Global supply chains are incredibly complex. Tariffs increase costs at every step. Those costs are passed to consumers. That means higher prices for electronics, cars, clothing, appliances. Even food can become more expensive because agriculture is heavily tied to global trade. So while tariffs may protect some industries, they also increase costs across the economy. This creates winners and losers. Manufacturers may benefit. Consumers may pay more. The question is the trade-off worth it? Part 7. The political strategy. Trump's domestic appeal. Trump's economic message is powerful politically. Many American communities were devastated by deindustrialization. Factories closed. Jobs disappeared. Entire towns declined. Trump speaks directly to those voters. He promises to bring jobs back, to restore industrial strength, to put America first. This message resonates deeply in key political regions. It's not just economics. It's identity. It's pride. It's security. But critics argue tariffs are a blunt instrument. They can cause inflation. They can trigger retaliation. They can hurt exporters. So the debate isn't simple. It's complex and deeply divided. Let me ask you, do you think tariffs strengthen a country or weaken it over time? Part 8. China's counter-strategy. Playing the long game. China isn't passive. It has been preparing for this scenario. China is investing heavily in domestic manufacturing technology independence, alternative trade partnerships. It's strengthening ties with Russia, Southeast Asia, Africa, Middle Eastern nations. China's goal is clear: reduce dependence on the United States and build a parallel global economic network. This is known as economic decoupling. Two separate economic worlds, one led by Washington, one led by Beijing. This would be one of the biggest geopolitical shifts of the century. And it's already happening. Part 9. The risk of escalation. Economic wars don't always stay economic. History shows they can escalate. Trade conflicts can increase political tensions. Political tensions can increase military tensions. We saw this pattern before World War II. Protectionism increased, global cooperation collapsed, and conflict followed. Now, we are not saying history will repeat itself, but the warning signs are real. Economic fragmentation creates instability, and instability creates risk. This is why economists and policymakers are watching closely, because decisions made today could shape the world for decades. Part 10. The bigger picture. The end of globalization. For decades, globalization defined our world. Goods moved freely. Companies operated globally. Economies became interconnected. But now, that era may be changing. Countries are prioritizing self-reliance, domestic production, strategic independence. This shift is driven by security concerns, economic competition, political pressure. Trump's tariff proposal is part of this larger trend. It's not the beginning. It's an acceleration. The world may be entering a new era, an era of economic competition, an era of economic blocs, an era where economic power defines geopolitical power. Here's the final question I want you to think about. Are we witnessing the collapse of globalization or its transformation into something new? Conclusion. Why this matters to you. This isn't just about Trump. This isn't just about China. This is about the future of the global economy. The decisions made now will affect prices you pay, jobs that exist, technologies that develop, and the balance of global power. Economic war doesn't look dramatic. There are no explosions, no battlefields, but its effects can be just as profound. It shapes nations, it shapes futures, and it shapes your life. The real question isn't whether economic war has begun. The real question is, are we prepared for the world that comes after? Because once global economic trust breaks, it's incredibly difficult to rebuild. If you found this analysis valuable, subscribe to the GeoPulse, because understanding the world isn't optional anymore. It's essential, and the story of this economic war is only just beginning.